The Tennessee Titans have too many good rookie receivers to keep Treylon Burks. That's why it's time to cut the first round bust once and for all. That and more roster predictions on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's show, we're going to start my 53-man roster predictions. I'm going to tell you everybody at every position that I think makes the Tennessee Titans this year. We're going to start on offense. I'm going to tell you why the Titans need to cut Treylon Burks, why Will Levis must be traded, and why the battle for depth spots on the offensive line is going to be very interesting to watch. Before we dive into all of it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one because it may be an off season for the Tennessee Titans, but there is no off season for Locked On Titans. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to do the defensive side of the ball. The Titans have practice this week. I'm going to be breaking that down for you guys as well. So again, make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. With that being said, we do got to dive into my 53-man roster predictions. And in my opinion, the most interesting position to talk about on offense is at wide receiver. There are so many guys. And look, there's a mixture of new guys, young guys, some veteran guys. I think at the end of the day, the Tennessee Titans must lean towards their rookie wide receivers, and they only have so many spots. There are some people who talk about potentially keeping 7 wide receivers, and I think that could be a possibility for the Tennessee Titans, but that's one too many for me on my actual 53-man roster. If I had to choose between 4 tight ends and 6 wide receivers or 7 wide receivers and 3 tight ends. For me personally, I like the utility of a tight end. I think the Titans need to maybe play a little bit more 2 tight end than maybe we're all expecting. So I would lead towards 4 tight ends. So a little bit of a spoiler for the tight end position. But at the end of the day, I decided to keep 6 wide receivers. And if there's only 6 wide receiver spots, at the end of the day, there is no spot for Treylon Burks. Now, Treylon Burks is on the final year of his rookie contract. He has not panned out. The trade that sent A.J. Brown out and brought Treylon Burks in, look, that's not Treylon Burks' fault, but at the end of the day, that will always color the perception of his career, his time with the Titans. It is an outright disaster. He is a total, absolute bust in every sense of the word. Look, I hope that he gets healthy, and I hope that he has a healthy training camp to try to come back and make something happen here. But I'm just not buying it. I didn't buy it last year. I'm not buying it this year. I don't buy the hope. I think it's time to move on from Treylon Burks. You have better options. I think the Tennessee Titans cut the former first-round pick this year, and he does not make the Tennessee Titans 53-man roster. In my mind, you look at the group, you have Ridley, you have Lockett, you have Van Jefferson, you have Treylon Burks, you have James Prochet, the veteran, you have Mason Kinsey, who's been around forever, you have the rookies, Chim Dike, Alec Iomanor, Xavier Restrepo, then you have a guy like Colton Dow, Jaquan Jackson, Bryce Oliver, and then the undrafted free agent, TJ Sheffield, okay? You look at that group as a whole, I think it's 12 total, and I'm only keeping half. I'm only keeping 6, and I'm keeping my 3 veterans. I'm keeping Ridley, Lockett, and Van Jefferson. I'm keeping my 3 veterans. I think there are some people out there who are going to say, why are we keeping Van Jefferson? I don't think, guys, they brought in a veteran presence for a reason. Van Jefferson has size, which Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley aren't the biggest guys. Van Jefferson gives you a little bit more size, and he's fast as well. Hometown kind of guy from the area. I think Van Jefferson is a lock to make the roster, in my opinion. I might be the only person worth saying that. I think it might be safer to say that Van Jefferson is on the bubble and that Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett are the only people who are truly locks to make the roster at wide receiver. But I would put Van Jefferson in there, and I think it's even more important to have 3 veteran wide receivers when the other 3 wide receivers you're going to keep are all rookies. I think the Titans keep Chimdike. I think the Titans keep Alec Iomanner. I think the Titans keep Xavier Restrepo. I think all 3 of them make the roster. And I would tell you that I think it's more likely that I'm wrong about the count and the Titans keep 7 wide receivers, whether the extra wide receiver be Treylon Burks or whether it be Bryce Oliver or James Prochet. I think it's much more likely the Titans were to keep 7 wide receivers if it means keeping Xavier Restrepo. But I think Xavier Restrepo is going to make this team. I'm sorry, the chemistry that he has with Cam Ward, his story, his style on the field, what he can do. And again, I talked about it last week after OTAs. Go watch some of those individual drills at Titans practice. Go watch. Xavier Restrepo is not significantly slower than all these guys on these short intermediate routes that they're running in these drills, and that's exactly what Xavier Restrepo is going to be. Is he a vertical slot? No, but you know who is? Chimdike. You know who else can be a vertical slot? Calvin Ridley. Who else do the Titans have who could be that possession slot receiver? Tyler Lockett. Lockett isn't a long-term answer. So I'm going to continue to say that Xavier Restrepo makes this team until he doesn't. Until it's obvious that he's not going to, or until he doesn't. I'm going to bet on Xavier Restrepo. I just think the connection is too clean. It's too obvious. His skill set is useful with this team too, and I will go back to what we talked about at the end of last week, special teams. Xavier Restrepo being a potential returner for the Titans could absolutely sway things in a way that it is impossible for him to not make the roster. If he were to show himself in the preseason, in joint practices, and in training camp to be a valuable punt returner or kick returner, that would hammer it home. Right now, I think Xavier Restrepo makes the roster, but I would feel even more emboldened about that opinion if he can come out and be one of the top returners the Titans use during the summer process. Would just be absolutely critical. Remember, and this is going to go for any of the end of the roster guys that we talk about during this 2-part series, any, with the exception of a few positions, like quarterback, special teams isn't a big thing. But essentially any other position, tight end, wide receiver, running back, anything on defense essentially. Even you could say offensive line with playing on, field goal units. Special teams is what earns a roster spot for the end of the roster players. And then they earn the opportunity through special teams to continue to develop their games at their actual offense-defense position. That's the way that it works, okay? So Xavier Restrepo is going to have to prove himself relevant in special teams, or it will be an uphill battle. His margin of error to make the roster will go down or up, however you want to say it. It will be much more difficult for Xavier Restrepo to actually make this roster if he does not prove that he can be somewhat of a returner. So that's going to be something very interesting to watch. But at the end of the day, I'm keeping 6 wide receivers, not 7. I'm cutting Treylon Burks. I'm going to take Bryce Oliver and maybe Jaquan Jackson onto the practice squad. Mason Kinsey, I'll just bring him back. You know what I mean? But Burks, fresh start, time to go. Prochet will be right on that line. Colton Dow, I've seen enough. TJ Sheffield, no way. So Jaquan Jackson, Mason Kinsey, Bryce Oliver, one of that group. But hey, there's a lot of offensive spots left. We got 6 spots down. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Look, LinkedIn is the best place to hire for a small business. When you own a small business, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy. to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. It's LinkedIn's new feature. It can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, doing my 53-man roster predictions. We're talking about offense today. Just talked about the 6 wide receivers I would keep. Now we need to get into the backfield, and I would like to remind you all that I said it, and I still believe it. Will Levis will be traded before week 1. And it needs to happen. Now, before I get into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be doing the defensive side of the ball. Excited to see you guys play along with me as well. Let me know your predictions down below in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Let me know as well. But we have 6 wide receivers, and now we get into the backfield. And for me, the Tennessee Titans need to keep 2 quarterbacks. 2 quarterbacks. That's going to be the case. Now, I think you need to have 3 quarterbacks in your organization. You need to have a practice squad quarterback. Maybe they want to keep 3 and do the emergency quarterback where you got to have them on your 53-man roster, but they're not technically on your game day roster, but if both your quarterbacks get hurt or ejected, then they can come onto the field and play. Maybe the Titans do that, but I just don't think it's necessary. And I think you want to have someone in the organization, but I think the Titans are going to keep 2 quarterbacks. And I think obviously you have Cam Ward, and then obviously you have Brandon Allen. Now you have Cam Ward, Will Levis, Brandon Allen, and Tim Boyle on the roster. Right now I think Tim Boyle will be kept if possible, but he was available to sign as a 3rd quarterback, so it's not like other NFL teams were rushing out there to grab Tim Boyle. I think that if you have Cam Ward as number 1, and then you have Brandon Allen as your backup on your 53-man roster, and then you have Tim Boyle as your practice squad guy, that's what would make the most sense. Now, if you cut Will Levis and tried to make him your practice squad guy, he would get picked up in an instant by another NFL team. That's just how this works. 2nd-round pedigree. He's always going to get more opportunities than maybe his play says that he should get. But I think that Will Levis ultimately, again, will be traded. I think whether it's injuries in training camp, whether it's a team without a good quarterback solution that just wants to get another look at somebody. Think about a team like the Jets or a team like the Rams or a team like maybe the Jaguars with Liam Cohen. He would want to get Will Levis back. Now, that would be interesting to see the response from Titans fans if that move were to happen. But, I think you look back to last year. Again, Malik Willis traded for a 7th-round pick right before cutdowns, because a team would rather give up a 7th-round pick in the future than try to, fight on waivers or, free agency or anything for guys. Just, hey, I want to go pay for this guy and bring him in. I do think that there will be a market for a future conditional 7th-round pick for Will Levis. I do think that's the case. I think it's going to be a 7th-round pick in 2027 that could potentially be a 6th-round pick based on if he makes the roster or how many snaps that he plays. I've been continuing to hammer home that I think that there is more maneuverability and flexibility in how you could set up a trade than maybe people want to acknowledge. There are a lot of people out there who just like, Levis isn't worth a bag of chips. Not trading. Nobody trade for him. And that's just like silliness. It's just like childish to think about it that way, that there clearly would be. If they could trade Malik Willis last year, they could find a way to trade Will Levis this year. And I ultimately think that's what's best for Will Levis as well. We talked about it on my last show of last week, that's what's best going forward for both sides. The Titans get a little bit of late draft capital and clearly establish it's Cam Ward's locker room and kind of get out this black cloud that is Will Levis's situation. And Will Levis gets a fresh opportunity to prove himself and, have a real shot to establish himself as in a locker room without the pressure of it being the team that drafted him and just the negative feelings of how things worked out here in Tennessee. It's best for both. So I still think that Will Levis gets traded. I still feel good about guaranteeing that he won't be on the roster week 1 of the NFL season. They may have to hold on to him throughout training camp, through some of the preseason, but I think we're going to see a ton of Will Levis in the preseason. There's no reason for Brandon Allen to prove himself. Cam Ward is going to play a little bit, but you need to make sure that he doesn't get hurt and treat him like the starter. I think we're going to see a ton of Will Levis and a ton of Tim Boyle, and I think looking to trade Will Levis would make sense, and then Cam Ward and Brandon Allen, who was Joe Burrow's backup in Kansas City. Remember, that's a big part of this too. Brandon Allen has less passing. He's 33, and he has less career passing yards than Will Levis does. Brandon Allen is truly a teacher in the room, and I love that too. You could say, hey, the Titans should want a better backup than Brandon Allen. They should want a quarterback that, if he had to go in, could actually maybe win some games, could actually do something. I disagree. And I look back to the Bengals. Joe Burrow tears his ACL in his rookie season. And listen, I do not want anything to happen to Cam Ward. That would be the worst thing that could happen this year. I don't care how many games the Tennessee Titans win this year. I'm excited to watch Cam Ward and these rookies. If Cam Ward isn't in for injury, the games are boring. The Titans are likely to get dominated anyways. And we don't get a fun evaluation of everybody else on offense. The rookie receivers, the offensive line, because it's Brandon Allen. But here's the reality. Like with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, if your franchise quarterback rookie gets seriously injured, you don't want to win games. And look what happened for the Bengals. Joe Burrow gets hurt. They get a top 5 pick because they have Brandon Allen and such playing after Burrow's hurt. They tank out the rest of the season. They get a top 5 pick. They get Jamar Chase. So for me, it's either I want to see the best of Cam Ward or I want the Titans to lose every game possible with a Brandon Allen or a Tim Boyle. That's why people who say, hey, Will Levis would be a great backup, a great number 2. Well, if Cam Ward gets hurt, I don't want a great backup or a great number 2. I want the backup to mentor Cam Ward and to teach him and to get him as ready as possible for his NFL career. That's what you're getting paid for, not to play. And if Cam Ward, knock on wood, sadly does get hurt, then let's tank out with Brandon Allen. So I think it's perfect to have Brandon Allen as the backup quarterback and then Tim Boyle as the practice squad quarterback who can be your third guy. It just makes too much sense, in my opinion. Now, also in the backfield, we've got to talk about running back. So I'm keeping 2 quarterbacks to go along with 6 wide receivers. That's 8 spots total taken. We go to running back, and I'm going to keep 4. I don't think that the Tennessee Titans want to be caught in the situation they were in last year where they truly did not have depth at running back. There were games where they had 1 running back available for a little bit of the game, because they had 3 available and 2 got hurt. They just can't have that happen again. And I think drafting a guy like Kellen Mullings from Michigan in the 7th round, that is, hey, now we can keep 4 running backs and know that one of them is going to be great at special teams. Julius Chestnut can help on special teams here and there, although I don't think Julius Chestnut is a very good special teams player. And if I'm honest with you, I think the 4 running backs the Titans keep, it'll be Pollard, it'll be Spears, of course, it'll be Mullings, the power back who can also be a big impact player on special teams. And then I think, they're going to find a 3rd running back off somebody else's team. Remember, the Titans are number 1 in the waiver claim until the season begins. So every cut that happens throughout the entire summer, the Titans get first dibs if they're a waiver eligible player. And the Titans have already, we'll talk about it more on defense, where the Titans have added more people on waivers, but the Titans have already taken advantage of that waiver claim opportunity. So I think the Titans will take advantage of the waiver claim opportunity or just sign a veteran guy. The Titans will get another running back who I think will be their fourth running back, and it'll be more of a pure runner who's better than Julius Chestnut, who I'm not that high on, if I'm honest. I never have been as much as maybe some other people who really like Chestnut. So 4 running backs, Pollard, Spears, Mullings, and then the fourth running back, in my opinion, isn't on the team yet, but we could call it Julius Chestnut if that's what you want to do. But that's 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers. That's 12 spots taken. Let's talk offensive line. Let's talk tight end. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, looking at my 53-man roster predictions for the offensive side of the ball. Right now, we have 12 spots filled up with 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers, mostly the rookie wide receivers taking up 3 of those spots. Again, I'm cutting Treylon Burks, but now let's talk offensive line, let's talk tight end, and then I'll tell you how many spots we got filled, how many spots we're going to fill on tomorrow's show. Before we get into all of that, though, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tight end. Maybe a bit controversial, but remember I told you, I was having a conversation of, do I want 7 wide receivers and 3 tight ends? Do I want 4 tight ends and 6 wide receivers? Maybe I want 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, and 10 offensive linemen. Maybe we could swing that. Maybe I want to go 4 tight ends, 7 wide receivers, and only 8 offensive linemen. How do you figure that out? Well, for me, I want to have bulk. I want to have beef. The game is won in the trenches. The game is physical. The Titans will need to run the ball for Cam Ward. The Titans will need to use 2 tight end sets maybe more often than we are saying that they will, because they have some decent tight ends that they can work in and that can help with the blocking. So in my mind, I told you I'm going 6 wide receivers, but I'm going to go 4 tight ends. And a lot of this also has to do with what the Titans did last year. We have Chigakonkwa. Of course, he's going to make the team. Potential trade candidate, in my opinion, but he's going to make the team. Josh Whyle makes the team. Now, I think Gunnar Helm's taken his job, but I still think Josh Whyle makes the team for now. Gunnar Helm, like I said, I think Gunnar Helm is going to be the starting tight end for the Titans. I think Gunnar Helm will get the most snaps of any tight end, barring health, this year. So that's 3. But if I'm keeping 4 tight ends, who will the other spot be? To me, it's David Martin Robinson. And again, I want to harken back to last year. The Titans kept 5 tight ends on the 53-man roster. And then for the majority of the season, both David Martin Robinson and Thomas Odukoye, the 2 other tight ends outside of Chig and Vanette and Wiley, the 2 that they kept on the roster and didn't even use, we were told that they kept them on the roster even though they were inactive most game days, because they thought that they would have been claimed. They would have been picked up by other teams. They would have lost the opportunity to develop these 2 young tight ends that they believe in. Now, that was Rand Carthon's roster, but Chad Brinker was involved, and Brian Callahan and the coaching staff were all involved in that decision. So that leads me to believe that they thought that a David Martin Robinson or Thomas Odukoye could take a huge step by this time next year, speaking from last year's perspective, so right now. And I'm going to buy into that. David Martin Robinson is a big-bodied tight end that also has good athleticism and movability. If you look at Josh Whyle and Gunnar Helm as similar style players who can rotate that role, well, then Chigakonkwo needs somebody who can mimic what he does. And David Martin Robinson is a little bit thicker than Chigakonkwo, not quite the athlete, but he has better athleticism, in my opinion, than Thomas Odukoye, who is a much bigger, stronger, more inline, wide tight end style guy. But Odukoye gets some international pathway player exemptions. Now, the Titans putting him on the roster last year, based on the rules, should have ruined and eliminated that international player pathway exemption. But I'm pretty sure the Titans reapplied for it and the NFL obliged. So I'll have to check where they're at with that. But you can keep Odukoye on the practice squad, on the roster with that exemption, and it gives you an extra player. The Titans love taking advantage of that and have since Odukoye has been around now for about 4 years. I think David Martin Robinson is the better fit for the roster. I think the roster mechanics are easier with David Martin Robinson. I think that if the Titans kept 5 tight ends on the 53-man roster last year and one of those 2 tight ends doesn't emerge to take a roster spot this year, that was an absolute colossal failure. Now it's Rand Carthon, so what am I going to do? But at the end of the day, it would still suck. I think David Martin Robinson can make this roster. Now, going to the offensive line. So we have 4 tight ends, 6 wide receivers, that's 10. 4 running backs, that's 14. And 2 quarterbacks, that's 16. Now we go to offensive line, and I'm going to take 9 spots. I do not want to be in a bad spot with depth on the offensive line. It cannot happen for the Titans. And with all of the players that they have on the roster right now and in there competing, I have a hard time cutting it down to 8. I really do. So you guys know the top 5 who are going to make this team. It's the starters. Dan Moore, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Kevin Zeitler, J.C. Latham. Those guys are going to make the roster. Now what I'll say is this. Lloyd Cushenberry, will he be ready for week 1? They said he'll probably be ready for training camp. I don't know. That's a quick turnaround for a guy his size with an Achilles. Will he be ready for week 1? I don't know. Maybe he starts the season on some sort of list. And then that opens up. Now we're only keeping 8 offensive linemen. Or maybe we keep a 9th that we weren't planning on keeping otherwise. Or maybe if Cush doesn't count, we keep 8 offensive linemen. We add a 7th wide receiver. Maybe something like that happens. I could see that. But let's assume that Cush is healthy. You have those 5 taking up roster spots, and then I'm giving 4 more out. I'm going to keep Ali Udoh, who I think will be the best backup offensive tackle that the Tennessee Titans have. So I'm cutting Jalen Duncan. I'm cutting John Ojukwu. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon from Florida, who I really like, who I would put on the practice squad, doesn't make the roster. So I'm keeping Ali Udoh because he's my best backup offensive tackle. And then I'm going to keep Blake Hance because Blake Hance is a big guard, 6'5", with tackle versatility. So now, Ali Udoh is my number 1 backup offensive tackle, but the backup swing tackle is Blake Hance, who has offensive tackle versatility. But Blake Hance is also going to double as my number 1 primary backup offensive guard. Hance has backup offensive tackle capability and primary backup guard capability. That's going to be his role. He is my top interior offensive line backup at the guard spots. But I don't think Blake Hance can play center, so the Titans are going to need a center. And I think Corey Levin, who we heard from OTAs already, getting first-team reps at center, has been with the organization forever, drafted by the Titans. He's been here. I mean, people talk about Mason Kinsey in the Simpsons meme where you throw him out of the bar and then he's behind you. That's actually Corey Levin. The Titans cannot get away from Corey Levin, but I don't want to. I like Corey Levin as a backup. I think we're hearing that he's the primary center right now. Jackson Slater, the rookie out of Sacramento State, I think ultimately will be the new Corey Levin eventually, but not right now. So Corey Levin with Ali Udoh and Blake Hance are my primary backups on the offensive line, but then I am going to keep Jackson Slater. I'm going to keep Slater around because Slater can be Hance's backup as the backup guard, and he can be Levin's backup as the backup center, and he's a guy who I think would be picked up immediately off waivers by another team if you cut him. The Titans need to keep Slater on the roster to continue developing him. I think he can be a starting center in a couple of years. I think he can be a primary backup by halfway through the year, and with Cushenberry's Achilles being on the fritz and who knows, I think that's a smart decision. Now, that means, again, Jalen Duncan, John Ojukwu, you're finally out of here. Andrew Rupsich, you didn't make the roster. Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, you didn't make it. Two guys who the Titans brought in who are veterans on the interior offensive line, and Sam Mustipher and Brendan Jamies, you didn't make it. And then Chandler Brewer didn't make it either. So there are so many guys on the offensive line that are going to be battling here. But I'm keeping my 9 with the starting 5, and then Udo, Hance, Levin, Slater. So 9 offensive linemen with 4 tight ends, that's 13. With 6 wide receivers, that's 19. With 4 running backs, that's 23. With 2 quarterbacks, that's 25. That gives us 28 spots that we got to fill on tomorrow's show. I'm going to go over defense and go over special teams. That's going to do it for me today, though, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.